And yeah, I'm sure that there's lots of other things you could have been doing this afternoon, but we just appreciate that we've got your attention. So we really hope you enjoy our webinar today. And we're really delighted that we have Leif Adele here with us. And Leif is one of our principal consultants here at EPM Partners. He's got a really strong background in engineering, project management and information technology. He's worked with Microsoft project and portfolio management since its early versions. And he's participated in a number of large EPM implementation projects in Australia and overseas. He's also our chapter leader of the Microsoft Project User Group. So Leif, we're delighted to have you with us here and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chantal. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the webinar. I guess it's quite, I guess, business focused this webinar. We usually look at EPM from a, I guess, a technology perspective. But I guess because it's a project portfolio management tool, I'm pretty sure that you all appreciate it. Brings a big change to the organization. So today's webinar basically is we've collected like the most common or the best, if you'd like, practices, 5 of those when organization establishing their PMOs or their PMO services using the Microsoft EPM platform. So basically, I'm going to go through a bit of an introduction on organizational behavior and PMOs, and then get into our kind of recommendation in terms of what are the best practices that you need to be on in order to successfully establish a PMO, or in fact start PMO services. So even if you have an established PMO, but the PMO is not providing certain services or not providing certain services effectively, how you can actually use the tool to start offering those services or offering them more effectively. Basically, we will have kind of 5 sections. The sections are, why do we have a PMO? Just to set the scene in terms of, I guess the goal or the objective of having a PMO, and that is aligned obviously and tightly with an introduction of a project or portfolio management platform. And we'll talk about the types of those PMOs because, again, they align back to the services, which is the third section, which links to the EPM or the Microsoft EPM deployment in terms of what you do and to use those services through the tool itself. Now I'm going to talk about something called IAM, and it's basically, if you'd like, an approach that EPM Partners is adopting when it comes to deploying the Microsoft EPM solution to help or enable PMOs provide services or establish PMOs. So I'll go through the IAM methodology, if you'd like, or the IAM process there. And obviously then we will probably finish up with a Q&A. If you have any questions, you can post them or ask them directly, and we'll take them and try to answer them. Now, I think that we have a poll that you can respond to, and basically it is the question of what do you need a PMO for in your organization? And by the way, throughout the webinar today, I'm not claiming that this is based on a P3O or a PMI standard, although I'm going to reference those a few times. But this is not if you would like, an academic or even a methodology-based webinar. This knowledge we, as an EPM Partners as a business, have gained through our experience in implementing the tool across our clients. So this is the way we see it as EPM Partners, and me personally through my experience. But it doesn't reflect any standard methodology or practice out there. So the way we've seen the need for the PMOs really where, at least here in Australia, we're around these 4 main bullet points, if you'd like. One of the main things that we've seen PMOs doing is really give that visibility and clarity, if you'd like, insight on what's happening in the project or program that's being delivered within the organization. Mainly, this is what we've been seeing as a number one reason why PMOs were established. An exec level person or people would like to have visibility in terms of what's going on in the organization. There are projects that are consuming resources, be it people's time or actual money or so on and so forth, as in hiring contractors and capital expenditure and the rest of it. And exec or management are trying to have visibility on how those projects are going and where's the spend and are we on time, have we achieved those projects, and basically where's the money going, where's people's time going, and so on. So that really is one of the major reasons we felt out there in the kind of client land in terms of why PMOs were established or why there were a need for a PMO. The other one is kind of, excuse me, it's not a, if you'd like, as I said, it's definitely this one is not a formal academic. If you read the P3O or the PMI standards and so on, actually this one is not probably mentioned, at least not clearly. It talks about the coordination that a PMO would give the organization that wouldn't happen if you just do a ad hoc project management, i.e. if you have people who are project managers, either dedicated project managers or people who act as project managers within the organization, managing projects in silos and delivering the outcomes, deliverables of these projects, there are still a few things that needs to be done across the projects. Typically something like, for instance, resource management. Each project manager would be managing the resources on his or her project, but we felt that one of the main reasons why PMOs were established is to give that, if you'd like, level across projects to do coordination, resources distribution, if you'd like, between those projects and programs. Getting the project managers to talk to each other in terms of deliverables, if there are interdependencies and so on, but mainly around resource management, really. So this is another reason why PMOs we felt out there were created and been established. The other very strong one is governance around their project management, if you would like, processes, and having governance that those projects or the project that the organization are delivering would have a good success rate, so those organizations would basically realize the benefits in terms of that would come from these projects. So PMOs were established to make sure that project managers or program managers will follow that governance model, would fill in the right forms, get the project approved by the right people, manage the stakeholders, do risks management, issues management, and all the rest of it, to follow the standards or the project management methodology that is in the organization, again, to help get a good success rates and realize the benefits that those projects would potentially deliver to the organization. So that's the third main reason. The fourth one is probably the least one that I've seen out there, but it's growing, I guess, in terms of number of PMOs who are actually doing that, is basically the alignment of initiatives to strategic direction within the organization. And it's different than demand management. I know that many people we actually talk about demand management as a concept or as a term, and then actually refer to it as, or probably mix it with strategic alliance of initiatives to initiatives. Sorry, strategic objectives to initiatives. So it is different than demand management. Demand management could be simply, managing resources, demand on resources, demand on budget, and so on, and prioritizing using a manual process, if you would like, of those initiatives. So and stopping and starting projects as those as the demand shapes on the enterprise resources. But the alignment is actually further than that. The alignment is the prioritization process is not only done by putting a number against the project, but it goes through a process to align these initiatives to the strategic objectives, make it quantified, measure it, and then, if you like, put it into the demand management machine for it to be crunched there. So these are really the four main reasons, or I guess objectives that PMOs we see achieve, or reason why PMOs were established out there in the client land. So I guess back to you, Chantal, in terms of the poll. How do we feel that, or the responses are?
Okay, so we've got 50% of you that have voted, which is fantastic. If anybody else wants to put in a vote before we close it, that would be great. We'd love to know why you need a PMO. So I'm just going to give you a few more seconds to vote. And also, we really want you to get the most out of this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the questions box on the side. I'll be monitoring those and asking Leith those questions throughout the webinar today. So, okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to close that poll now so we can get the those results. So, Leith, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's kind of aligns. I'm a bit surprised that the second one had 0, but I mean, mostly people are saying that they probably it's 43, 57. So I probably would call it a half. Better visibility and governance. So these are the two, I guess, main criteria that have been, I guess, selected, the visibility and governance, which is not surprising. Bit surprised that no one actually have chosen the coordination, because it's something that I've seen quite often when PMOs are established. But there we go. So visibility, I guess, well, governance actually is number 1 in 57%, and visibility is in number 2 on 43%. So I guess that makes sense in terms of the expectation, or sorry, the knowledge that we have here. Right. Moving on, the types of PMOs, and it's quite actually important for us to understand the types of PMOs before we move on to how we deliver services through our Microsoft EPM tool. And before we talk about the types of a PMO, I guess it's important to put it in context in terms of the type of the organization that a PMO belongs to. So I guess we kind of all appreciate that when it comes to the I guess project portfolio program management perspective, organization could be either functional, project management centric, or a matrix organization. A functional organization is a typical departmental or business unit or function, if you'd like, organization, where you would have a team lead, a business manager of a unit, a department manager, who would own the resources and would basically manage the work there. It's in a way, it's an independent, well, in terms of project program management perspective, it's independent than the other units within the organization. So if there are project managers either within a business unit or in a separate entity, be it the PMO, for example, the resources are released to the project or program through the unit manager, the business unit manager, or the team manager, or the functional manager. So that's a functional organization. The resources and the work is owned by the functional managers. PM-centric, I guess, typical example for functional organizations are, the government agencies and the rest, and departments, while a PM-centric or project management-centric, where basically the structure of the organization is built around the projects, i.e. the project manager owns the resources for the period of the project, or the program manager owns the resources. They basically, the people report to the resources report to the project program manager on that period of the project or the program. One typical construction, I guess, builders, this is how we work. A construction project, the project manager would be owning resources for the, typically, would own the resources of the project for the period of the project. And then the matrix, which is the most common one, I guess. The matrix organization is a mixture of both functional and project management or project management centric, where you would have functions, but you also would release resources for certain projects and programs. And that's probably the most popular or the most common organizational structure that I've seen. Now, when it comes to PMOs, I guess, and I'm quite confident that most of us here who dealt with PMO or established a PMO or have worked in a PMO appreciate those three types of PMOs: the supportive, the controlling, and kind of the directive PMOs. And I guess if we go through them, supportive PMOs are a kind of a PMO that is established to main purpose to provide supportive services. So it's basically an optional service rather than a mandated service within the business. So a project manager in an organization that has a supportive PMO would go to the PMO to ask about the how things are run in the organization. Can you give me tips in terms of where the latest form is? How do I secure resources? How do I do this? How do I do that? And in some cases, actually, training, proper training in project management or tools. Training people on using project or even Excel templates that live in the organization. That's a supportive PMO. Controlling PMO is basically a PMO that is more than supportive. Basically, it makes sure that project managers are following a certain methodology, basically a governance body. Make sure that a project manager has been approved and certain forms have been filled in before the project moves from one stage to the other. That the project manager has filled in the risks analysis form and the project brief or whatever you want to call it. That certain reports are produced by the project managers across the board for projects, and so on and so on. So that's more a controlling body in the organization. It is not an optional service. It's a mandated service. You can't get your project approved or moving or running in the organization without a controlling PMO entity being involved in some shape. And then the directive PMO, which is basically the most, I guess, effective PMO, if you would like, in terms of delivery, because in the first two types, the supportive and controlling, project managers actually do not report to the PMO, and that makes it more aligned with a functional organization. So basically, the PMO in the supportive and in controlling PMO types do not own the project managers as resources. They can come from even probably a project management group that don't report to the PMO, but to a project management director, as an example, or to their departments, separate departments. So an IT project manager will belong to IT, and HR project manager will belong to HR, and so on. So it makes the two types more common in functional and in some cases matrix organization actually, and matrix organizations. While the kind of the directive PMO, where the project managers report to the project management office, where they actually managed by the project management office to deliver projects within the organization, is the directive PMO. So the directive PMO is more than a governance body or an advisory body, but it's actually a delivery body. It delivers the projects. The PMO would be responsible for the delivery of projects and programs. There's a really nice link here, a very useful link for the PMI standard for, I guess, the frameworks of PMOs. If I can open it, yes, there we go.
And Laith, I'm just going to send everybody that link on the webinar chat link there. So if you want to have a click and look at it later, I've just sent you the live link so that you can all view it at your own leisure.
Thank you, Chantal.
No problems.
So, look, I'm not going to go through it. I'm just probably just put it there as a useful link, if you guys are interested to read. But one of the interesting bits of this document actually is the one that I'm going to scroll to. Yeah, there. So basically, kind of maps the criteria of a certain measures a certain criteria against the PMO framework type. So it's basically categorized PMOs into different frameworks, and basically shows us how to know what framework our PMO is, or in fact, if you are establishing a PMO, what kind of a PMO I should establish. And based on that, we would then be able to see what kind of services that we'd be able to focus on, and then ultimately talk about the Microsoft EPM or any PPM tool implementation, and take it and align that implementation to the services that a certain PMO framework can deliver. Now, this is a PMI standard. It is not a P3O, so it's not Prince 2. Prince 2 actually has a kind of a different angle in terms of how the PMOs are classified. But quite interesting, I think, this document. It for me was quite. It was published in 2013, which is last year. When we received this document, we were quite excited about it, actually, because it makes it easier to understand the shape of a PMO you are establishing, if you'd like, and that helps the EPM implementation. So I guess link for your use and read. Now, before I go to the next slide, actually, I don't want to share it yet, but I would like you to basically go to the next poll and reply to or answer the poll in terms of what do you think your PMO type is? Is it supportive, controlling, or directive? Because probably won't share with you yet what I'm going to actually talk about, but it will be interesting to see your input or your response to the poll versus what I'm going to show you in a few minutes.
And while you're all voting, we've actually had a question through. So, I'm going to ask you this question. It's, can I please ask, based on your experience in visibility, what are the typical reasons for establishing a PMO in the market, and which ones typically succeed and conversely fail?
Well, thanks for the question. I guess it's in terms of the typical reasons, they are the ones that we talked about initially. Why have a PMO, which is giving the business better visibility, coordination, governance, or strategic alignment. These are really the four most typical reasons for establishing PMOs. And it is sorted in a way that I think, from my experience, and that's why I'm surprised that no one actually voted for the second one. But it is prioritized. It is listed here, sorted by what I believe is the most common to the least common. So visibility, I think, is the top of the list, and I think the poll aligned with that expectation. So, and the second one, I think, is coordination. Third one is governance and, if you'd like, methodology enforcement. The last one is the alignment of the initiatives to strategic drivers. What has failed and succeeded? I guess the failure and the success of establishing a PMO with or without EPM. Well, to be honest, I can't really comment much about without EPM. I mostly was exposed to a PMO that were established through the tool. But the ones that are established through the tool, I don't think I can link them to the reasons. I think why those PMOs has failed or succeeded, or the implementation to that matter has failed or succeeded, I don't think there's a link to that with the reasons of the PMO establishment itself. There are other criteria to measure why the tool has been implemented successfully or not, but I don't believe I can link them to those, I guess, needs that the PMO is established based on. I know that it's not probably a clear answer, but I don't know if I can actually give you a direct answer. I don't know if I can link them.
Okay, thanks for answering that, Leith. But there's also another one here. In a functional organizational type, how would you initially provide advice to your clients on how to effectively implement a PMO at a high level?
Well, it's resource management. It is resource ownership. So that BAU activity is okay. Let me take a step back. So in a functional organization, the challenge with a PPM tool, which is project portfolio management tool, and a PMO, I guess, initiative. Sorry, with or without the tool. So to implement a PMO in a functional organization, the number one challenge that you need to address is that resource assignment. People working on what they call a BAU or business as usual, and then the PMO demanding, requesting, whatever you want to call it, those resources to work on initiatives, projects, and programs. To have that structure, that process put right is crucial to the success of a PMO in a functional organization, because you'll have those functions, business units, department, whatever you want to call them, resources owned by the head of that unit, and PMOs, directly or indirectly, would be wanting to utilize those resources on project-related work while they are governed and managed by other people and busy usually doing their BAU activities. They're usually, daily job, whatever that is. So that's crucial in terms of a PMO establishment on what is the process, how do you actually govern that process, and what is the tool? What are the tools that you're going to use? To govern that process? And that's I think the main one here.
Okay, thanks for that, Leith, and thanks everybody for voting. Let's just see what everybody answered. Okay, and there's our responses.
Okay, interesting. So this is the kind of there was a study that was basically done by PMI, not directly by PMI. I can't remember the business who conducted the study for PMI. In terms of the types of the PMOs globally, we're not talking about US-based here, we're talking about globally, types of PMOs around the world, types in terms of percentages. And the least one is actually the supportive PMO. While I guess here we're saying through the poll that we've elected or we voted that the supportive PMO is the most common one. The survey actually says it's 21% only. The interesting bit, which was interesting, I guess, to most of the people who are involved in the project portfolio management concepts, is that 43% are controlling PMOs, not supportive as you would think. So it's those PMOs that actually basically ensure governance, ensure that project managers follow the forms, follow the process, fill in the forms, deliver the whatever you want to call it, is basically the most common one. With the tools, with the reporting tools and everything, this is actually the most common one globally. And the other one, kind of directing and supporting PMOs are kind of equal. They're both on 21, 22% in terms of the portion or the percentage of PMOs out there. But there's an interesting finding, which is 14%. I thought that, to be honest, would be a bit more, which is no focus. A PMO that jumps on and does reporting for the organization when it's been asked to do reporting, but then because a new manager or a new exec direction comes in, actually we're going to focus now on governance, and they focus on governance for a couple of months, couple of quarters, I don't know, and then we're back to reporting, and then we're back to project managers delivering through the PMO, and some project managers don't. 14 or say call it 15% of those PMOs globally have no focus. I was a bit surprised about that as well. I thought that will be a bit more, because I've seen probably, if I want to put a number, a 40 to 50% of PMOs out there who have actually no certain focus. They can't really identify themselves. And when you ask them the questions, are you a supporting, controlling, or directing PMO, they can't really, they fail to answer. They can't really tell you whether if it's supporting, why then are you doing this? If you're controlling, why are you not doing this? Interesting fact anyway. I guess the poll that we got from you, the survey that we got from you, actually tells an opposite story. Mostly, it's supporting and probably non-controlling, or the least is controlling, and most is supportive. All right, moving on. PMO services, and this is how we can link it back to a delivery of a Microsoft or a non-Microsoft PPM tool. So these are the typical services that a PMO would deliver within an organization. Now, it's categorized by the P3O. P3O is the, if you like, portfolio program and PMO standards by, well, the same organization that give us Prince 2. So the P3O guide basically classifies those services into 3 categories: the strategic planning or portfolio support, the tactical or delivery support, and the capability support. And if you just read those through quickly, obviously the strategic planning and the portfolio support talks about that level. Portfolio build, program, and project setup and closure, the setting up, not the actual delivery. Stakeholder engagement and communications, planning and estimating, and so on. So, and one of the key things are benefits realization and performance monitoring, i.e. reporting. The tactical or delivery support is more hands-on, monitor the individual project reports, talks about finance, gets into the level of risks and issues management, quality assurance being delivered there as a service, not directly, but through the quality managers or QAs, and kind of a more focus on that level of tactical delivery. And the capability is more into, if you like, enhancements. This is the way I see it. Which is, people and skills, the organizational learning, and how we maintain the knowledge, and so on and so forth. So these are the 3 main areas. The PMI is classified in a different way. My personal take on the PMI versus the P3O. P3O is more realistic in terms of the classification of the services, but a bit hard to really link to real-world kind of scenarios. PMI is easier to kind of relate to, but probably is, I don't know, not as, I don't want to say sophisticated, but it's not as detailed in a way that would cover the services as the P3O. But anyway, so I'm going to actually, in my next slide, I'm going to talk about how you align PPM tools to the PMO services. So these are the typical or what PMI suggests as the PMO services, or the service that PMO would offer. So schedule, cost and scope management, communication, project integration. This is kind of the what they call the knowledge areas within PMI, I guess. I can't remember now what the exact name, to be honest. But these are the areas that a PMI suggests to be delivered through the PMO. Now, this is where we start talking about, okay, so we know the services. Now, whether you want to use a PMI standard to qualify, to identify your services or a P3O, doesn't really matter. It's just a terminology difference. But whatever services that you would like to offer through your newly established PMO, or in fact a PMO that you already have, and you would like those services to be introduced to the business via a PPM or Microsoft EPM tool, then this is what we see as the best way of doing it. And we call it the IAM process. Now, as you can see on my slide, we try to make it a bit, I guess, friendly when we go to the users, and we call it hello or hi, I am PMO. So if you implement a PPM tool, maybe that should be the slogan of your campaign. But the IAM is actually made of 3 letters, the I, the A, and the M. And the I is to introduce the A to adopt, and M to measure. Now, by itself, this three steps is within one iteration. And you introduce your services through a number of iterations, but each iteration will have these three steps. So, as an example, so I guess this is best practice number one, to establish a PMO or to start delivering service through a PMO that exists. Is that you set up the tool, EPM tool, in an iterative or kind of stages, iterations process. And one iteration we suggest should be made of these three steps: introduce, adopt, and measure. So the introduce, adopt, measure, or what we call the IAM, is quite important, because what you do is first you introduce a concept or a service, well, a service actually. So say that you want to introduce resource management. So if I go back to the PMI kind of services, and I pick, for example, resource management or schedule management as my first iteration, which is not recommended, but anyway. So you introduce resource management, and when we say introduce, is basically starting configuring your tool, starting to basically deploy it to users. People start doing resource management through the tool, and it's different than adopting or adoption. The reason is you can introduce the tool, people start using it for a couple of months or a couple of weeks or a couple of days, I don't know, but then they will forget about it when in time. So so what you've done is you introduce the service, but the business didn't adopt it. And it's not a matter of just time. You leave it there and business will adopt the service. That, unfortunately, doesn't work that way. So you need to make sure you, as the implementer or the owner of the tool or the PMO, that you make sure that you reach that adoption level. So it's part of the business. It's everyone's mind. We know how to do resource management. We go to there. We click there. We produce that report. We do this. We talk to this person or group of people, and we send an email to that person or a group of people, and we go to that site. And it becomes adopted as a service rather than just introduced. And there's a key difference between introduction and adoption. And this is one of the main things that we see in organization, that you introduce a service throughout the tool, works fine while we're there, we walk away and we provide kind of very high-level support, and then we come back in time saying, oh, it's not working. And the reason is because there was no adoption. There was an introduction, but no adoption. And then after the adoption, you need to measure. And I know this probably would sound, academic more than practical, but it is. I can't really emphasize enough on the importance of measuring the success of your service. So, for example, again, taking the same example, resource management. Fine, you introduce it, people are using it. How do you measure the success of your resource management service? You need to measure it, because if you don't measure the success, if you introduce it and people adopt it, but it's not good, it is not a success, you'll struggle maintaining that adoption. People will just push back. We'll say, well, yeah, but it's not doing this and not doing that, and it's failing here, and the report is not right here, and it's not making my life difficult for no obvious reason or benefit. So it's really important that you have a quantified measure at the end of each iteration and saying, okay, resource management, let's introduce resource management. How do we measure the success of our resource management service? Is it by saying there will be no over-allocation of resources? Is it by saying our utilization go up by a certain percent? And so on and so forth. Is it by saying there will be no more people sitting on the bench? I don't know how you measure it in your organization, but it needs to be quantified. It needs to, excuse me, you have to set a date for that measurement. And that's what we call the IAM process. And the IAM process is embedded in each iteration, and each iteration will be linked to a service of your PMO services. So that's basically if you'd like, I've kind of talked about three best practices in one time. But if we go through them again, so the best practices are to set up the PMO through the EPM tool, using iterations, not big bang. You don't go and say, okay, let's implement PPM tool, let's do everything. Let's do schedule management, resource management, reporting, I don't know, all the rest of it. But you do it in an iterative approach. So you introduce the service through the tool, through a function, and in the iteration itself, you adopt, we recommend the IAM process. And the second one is make it repeatable. So the same IAM process, whether it's our IAM process or whether it's your process, whatever it would be, make sure that it is repeatable. So what applies to resource management should apply to schedule management, should apply to portfolio management, should apply to whatever service that you are introducing through your PMO. And again, key is to measure it. Measure that service success. You can't just leave it assuming that it's working and fine because you kind of met some mandates by management. You need to measure the effectiveness of your service. The other two, I guess, best practices outside that approach, and it is to build a bank of lessons learned, or if you like, an FAQs and videos, which is something that I personally like because videos, text is good in a way, whether lessons learned or FAQs, whatever you want to call them. Text is good because it is you can basically search for it. So if you are looking for a particular thing, you can search. But usually when we talk about change management with PMO, we're not talking about a technology that someone needs to do a specific thing and they're searching via text. Although it's quite important, how do I log in? How do I fill in the risks form? How do I submit my project to the next stage? But I believe videos, using the tool or not, basically it's quite important to have some videos recorded. You can upload it on the same tool side and people can watch those videos. So lessons learned and FAQs are crucial to a success of introduction of a PMO through an EPM tool. And then the other last, I guess, lesson here is training your project managers. And it's a challenge because project managers, and probably most of us come from that background, we think that we know it all. We know our stuff. We manage projects. We know this stuff. We know how to use Microsoft projects. You don't have to show me how to use a Microsoft project. I know what a project brief is. I know what a pilot report is. But unfortunately, it's not the case all the time. You have very strong project managers who are quite capable, skillful, high competency when it comes to project management. And you have project managers who are really good at their subject. They are more an SME more than a project manager who's really strong in IT, really strong in construction, really strong in retail. I don't know what the industry is. But they are not really good in the competency of project management. They're not skillful when it comes to project management, resource management, risks management, the rest of it. Using Microsoft Project as a very simple example. So really, it's key to invest on training, mentoring, coaching your project managers. And just to note that you shouldn't really wait for the entire tool or PMO to be established in order to start training people, or record those FAQs and videos and lessons learned, but actually do them within each iteration. So you're introducing schedule management. You do schedule management training, you do schedule management lessons learned, you do schedule management FAQs and videos and so on. Again, introduce, adopt, make sure it's settled down, everyone is using it, everyone is using the tool, measure it, is it effective, are we getting the right results, then move on to the next one. The last one that I basically would like to share, the slide that I would like to share with you is what we call the recommended story within an IAM service. So how do you introduce the service? What is the sequence of services through a PPM tool that we recommend? And it is, as you can see on the screen, it is start with IAM schedule management, and it's key. Make sure that there is at least a schedule for each project based on templates or not, has milestones or not, baselines or not. I don't know. This is particular for each PMO type, PMO level of service, and each organization. But make sure that the IAM schedule management is done first. So when we say IAM, it's introduction, adoption, and measurement. Then IAM risks and issue management. Now I put document there because it's actually not a PMO service, but we see it comes hand in hand with the risks and issues management. So your documents, versioning, control, and the rest of it. And then IAM resource management, utilization of people who's doing what, BAU or project work. IAM cost and financial management. And by the way, you don't have to do all of them. If you elect to say, well, I just want to do schedule and resource and, I don't know, portfolio reporting, then you do only these ones. Mind you, in many cases, some of them depend on the others, but you don't have to go through all of these. But if you have all or some of those, we recommend or we suggest this order that you can see on your screen. And then IAM methodology definition or governance, the process, the stages, and so on. And then the IAM metrics, which are important, how you measure whether the schedule is on time, whether the resources are okay on the project, and the rest. And then you get to the IAM portfolio reporting, which, funny enough, is where we start every time when we go to a new client. They go, okay, well, the requirement for an EPM tool is to give us a portfolio, a view of our projects. Okay, we can give you the view. We can literally configure, develop, deploy the portfolio in a couple of days, probably a couple of hours, depends on your requirement. But really, is that something that you really want at the beginning without you making sure that your schedules are right, your resources are right, management, sorry, are right, and so on and so forth, and they're actually in the tool for us to build that portfolio dashboard for you. So building the dashboard itself as an interface should be the least of your worries. It is getting the input of the dashboard itself. It should be the where you must invest most of your time and money. And then IAM portfolio prioritization, if you want to do that, i.e. linking to strategic drivers, and then doing demand management if you want to. And then IAM communication, which is something that we've been working with lately. It is proven to be a success in some organization, which basically is making PMO and the PMO tool, in this case Microsoft EPM, centric to the communications when it comes to projects. So having a dedicated project side, having an IM, an instant messaging capability, kind of a YAML group or a wiki group, and so on and so forth. But that probably would be the last of your IM process, I guess. That's really it in terms of what I wanted to share with you in terms of our experience, knowledge, and the practices or best practices that we wanted to share with you. I'm probably happy to open it for a Q&A and see what kind of questions that you guys have and maybe try to answer them.
We do have one from earlier, Leif. It's, does that mean in a functional organization, would you recommend to separate BAU resources and project type resources?
No, not really. No, you don't have to. I mean, ideally you would, but I don't think that it's feasible for people to actually do that, to separate the project resources from the BAU resources. But to manage that, if you like, overlap between the two types of work. So a single resource can deliver BAU activities and project activities at the same time, day, week. It is setting that process and structure to make sure that we get the project time that is required for a project and the BAU time that is requested for BAU, but through the unit manager. The simplest way, which is, in my view, quite, if you like, ambitious to try, is to just set percentage. You say this resource is 50% BAU, 50% project. I know this sounds, I guess, in theory, it should work, but in practice, it's challenging. So you need to go probably, in many cases, you need to go more sophisticated than just a percentage. But I didn't mean, isolating or separating resources that are dedicated for BU than one that are for project or program management.
Thanks for answering that, Leif. Does anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the question box. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So in your opinion, should an EPMO function sit under the CIO in an IT department or separate under the CEO, especially if the majority of projects these days have a touch point on technology?
Well, okay, so recommendation, we'll probably leave it for a minute, but or opinion, leave it for a minute. But what we've seen is more likely that the EPMO is sitting under a CIO more than under a CEO. However, if that EPM or that PMO, that project management, program management office, is a enterprise-wide, I probably wouldn't put it under the CIO if it was my call. I would make it a kind of report to the CEO. Mind you, it comes with its own pros and cons because probably a CEO wouldn't give you much attention as a PMO as opposed to if you go to CIO and then they report to CEO. Yes, most projects do touch on IT, but even that comes with a risk that the projects in the organization will be seen only the projects that have an IT component in it. But if you want to manage your actual project that don't have an IT component, or I guess it comes with a risk that if it doesn't have an IT component or a big enough IT component, that it's not a project. That would be my opinion.
Fantastic. And hi there, what advice would you give for someone who is implementing a PMO into an organization's project space?
Into, sorry, what?
Into an organization's project space. Do you need some clarification?
Yeah, probably if you clarify that. What do you mean by an organization's project space?
Demanjot, we'll just move on to the next question. If you can clarify that, we'll answer that question. So the next one is, what's the most typical problem solved by EPMO solution? For example, resource clashes.
No, I can answer this, Martin, quite easily, but I'm not happy with the answer. It is reporting. It is visibility. EPMO is really good when it comes to reporting and visibility. It gives you that full report, project status report, risks across the project's report, and even resource management reports. So its visibility is the most common problem that this solution or EPMO solution addresses. But not the problem, but the catch is it shouldn't be. This tool should resolve more than this visibility issue. It should go beyond that. It should go to schedule management, resource management, cost management, portfolio management, and so on. But unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know, it's been seen or used most likely to give visibility more than anything else.
Thanks, Slade. And the next question, what's the biggest blocker to implementing a successful EPMO solution? And Martin says, we have it, but don't use it.
Change management. So if we're talking about biggest challenge or blocker to implement EPMO, change management. Having the right set of skills, resources, people that will drive it in an iterative way. I'd say, as I said, use the I am kind of approach. That's the blocker. It's not a technology. I mean, I'm probably not doing ourselves any favor in terms of services, but it is. I mean, there are technical challenges to the tool itself, but apart from that, it is the change management. It is the introduction of the tool that needs to be aligned with the services provided. They don't usually align. You get people pushing back on you, and usually EPMO as a tool is implemented in one big bang. So again, change management. Thanks,
Blake. So Demanjot has rephrased his question, and it's, what advice would you give to someone who is implementing a PMO into a department where the projects are implemented?
Right, okay. I mean, it's PM-centric then, I guess, the situation there, thinking. So I guess in terms of, I guess, advice for a PM-centric organization, I'll probably focus on governance and methodology in these situations. So if you are implementing a PMO or a PMO tool in a PM-centric, the biggest chunk of attention should be around governance. While if your functional matrix probably should go to other areas, but I would focus on governance if it's a department or unit or an organization that is PM-centric.
Thanks, Blake. And Martin's asking, are there any available training materials to help them implement?
Well, I guess it depends on what we mean by training materials. There are heaps of information and materials out there for how to implement, install, and deploy a project server. I'm afraid there's none in terms of change management. It really depends on your organization, on how you implement it, and I guess this is where we why we're in business, I guess. If there's one, I'll be more than happy to share, but I didn't come across a change management document when it comes to Project Server.
So more technical capabilities of the solution?
Yeah. If it's technical implementation or technical capabilities, there's a company called Project Experts. Project Experts have really good set of manuals that you can use. They have, I think, a set of 4 or 5 manuals, very technical and not very technical. So if you just look at Project Experts or Project Experts Project Server training, I'm pretty sure that you'll find them.
So we're being asked a question about our competitors here. So from a product or solution perspective, who would you say are the competitors in the market against the Microsoft EPM tool?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. I guess Primavera comes in mind. Clarity also as an enterprise project management solution. HP has their own solution. But more and more, for the last probably 5 years, more and more we have smaller players are in the cloud that offer a PPM tool that are hosted in the cloud, and they are not these big names that we've been hearing of, like Clarity, Primavera, or Microsoft, or HP to that matter, or even SAP. Although all of the above actually do have or started to have an online solution, but these are typically the products that compete with Microsoft. Each one of those will have its own pros and cons. But yeah, these are the typical names that comes in mind when talking about competitive products to Microsoft's offering.
Fantastic. Thanks, Blake.
Pleasure.
So thank you, everybody, for all of your amazing questions. I think this was the most questions we've had on one of our webinars. So thanks for keeping it interesting and asking all your great questions. We really appreciate it. Leith, was there anything else you wanted to add before we close off?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks, Chantel, for facilitating it.
No problems. Yeah, so thank you, everyone, again. There's just a little survey at the end of this webinar. We'd love to know what you'd like to see on our webinar menu for next year. And also, we'll be sending you a link with the recording of this, just in case you want to go over any of the information that we've given you today. And as always, feel free to contact us if you have any questions. And we appreciate your time. Thanks very much. Bye.